I am an assistant professor here at the Sanford School and a faculty. Can you all hear me? Okay. So, a faculty affiliate of the Center for Child and Family Policy. Today's lecture is part of the Center for Child and Family Policy's 25th anniversary, as well as the Early Childhood Initiative, which seeks to bring together scholars to address challenges and produce world-class scholarship that helps maximize the potential of all children during their early childhood years. Speakers in this series range across disciplines, but share an interest in bringing cutting edge science to bear on policies and programs affecting young children. Before I introduce our speaker for today, if you could all take a moment to please silence your cell phones, we would appreciate it. Thank you. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Mariah Douglas Brule, our featured speaker for today's Early Childhood Initiative lecture. Mariah Douglas Brule is the founder and CEO of Playful Learning, which operates a play-based preschool in New York. It's here that Mariah and her team have developed a play-based method and curriculum specifically designed for the early childhood years. Bringing the world of research and practice together, Playful Learning shares curriculum, professional development, and support with teachers, schools, and families worldwide seeking to implement guided play programs. As an educator, curriculum developer, and advocate for meaningful early childhood education, Mariah has over 30 years of experience as a teacher and leader. She holds a Master of Science degree in education from Bank Street College and is the author of two books, Playful Learning, Develop Your Child's Sense of Joy and Wonder, and Real Life Rules, A Young Person's Guide to Self-Discovery, Big Ideas, and Healthy Habits. Her work reflects a deep commitment to empowering educators, children, and families to create enriching learning environments that inspire curiosity, confidence, and a love of discovery. Please join me in welcoming our speaker today. I think it's going to be easier if I hold this. Can everyone hear me? Hi, it's so nice to see all of you. Thanks for having me here. Let's get started. So today we're going to talk about from curiosity to confidence and building engagement in early childhood classrooms. We have we're going to first go into what we're going to talk about today. So today together we'll explore why engagement matters, what is playful learning, and the 4 pillars of playful learning, which consists of playful learning lessons, hands-on experiences, classroom curation, and school-to-home connection. Then we'll talk about measuring impact and some early results that we have, and some good news about recent studies that have come out about play-based learning, as well as some concluding thoughts. So why engagement matters? There's been lots of research on engagement for all stakeholders in the school community, students, teachers, parents, school leaders, and the community. And all of it overwhelmingly shows that if there is engagement by all of these constituents, that the outcomes are stronger problem-solving skills, social confidence, and long-term academic success. But the question is, on the ground level, in the front lines, how do we actually engage all of those people? So that's what Playful Learning was born to do. Oops. So we started Playful Learning to accomplish all of those tasks. We wanted to engage from the ground up when we started our program. Well, let me just tell you a little bit. I've been in early childhood for a while, and I've worked for other school environments. And then I decided to start my own school because I wanted to have the freedom and lack of bureaucracy to do whatever I felt was best for the children. So we started Playful Learning with these goals in mind. And what it is, we started a brick and mortar program that is basically a laboratory of learning for the teachers and the students and the parents. And so over the last 10 years that our doors have been open, we've been developing our own in-house curriculum and seeing how the children react to it, making accommodations. And then once we're done, we've had an online membership for the last probably 15 years. Although, because I was so involved in the brick and mortar aspect of the studio, all we would do is as we created new lessons, we would put them online because we wanted other people to be able to benefit from the resources that we were creating in-house. Now that I've hired a director and associate director to run the studio, my goal is to spread this to schools across the country and even the world. We do have a lot of inquiries from international schools as well. So if you ask any educator or anyone in the field what playful learning is, you might get, if you ask 10 people, you might get 10 different answers. So we developed our own definition of what playful learning is that I share with our teachers as they come on board. And that is playful learning is the magic that takes place when you meld a child's natural curiosity and creativity with thoughtfully curated learning experiences. What is our vision? Playful Learning envisions a world where every child, regardless of where they live or go to school, has access to engaging, enriching learning experiences. One that not only nurtures their curiosity, but also embraces their families and essential partners in the educational journey. So I'm dating myself a little bit with the research that I built this program on because I go way back. But some of the major studies that came out that were aha moments for me as an undergraduate student and a master's degree student were Lee Vygotsky's zone of proximal development and social interaction. The idea that the zone of proximal development is where we want to create learning experiences for the child that are just slightly above their ability so that that the challenge keeps them engaged in the activity. But if it's too challenging, they're going to give up. And if it's not challenging enough, they're going to only spend a couple minutes and go. So if you're in a classroom, you can see signs of this happening if children are coming in and dumping all the materials on the floor or not using the materials in the way they're intended. Those are clues for us as educators that we need to adapt the lesson and adapt the experience so that it meets that zone of proximal development. It's also hard to meet, in the early childhood years are probably the years that have the most diversity in abilities. If you think about how much they accomplish in those early years, it's incredible. So in order to meet the zone of proximal development for all of our students, we had to adjust the way we structure the classroom, allowing a sense of choice and providing multiple levels of activities. And not only that, but within our lessons that we create, providing differentiation within those lessons, slight little changes that you can make on each lesson that caters to different abilities in the classroom. So the next one is Yuri Bronfenbrenner, the ecological systems theory. I will never forget that day in my classroom where he put up the chart, the graphic organizer for the systems theory, and I was like, of course, it has to be within a community that you can't just pick a child up out of society, plop them in a classroom, until they're 18 years old, and then put them back in society and think that it's going to have an impact. Those are, we have to think about the citizens that we want to raise and create environments that nurture those qualities. Howard Gardner, multiple intelligence is another aha moment for me. Of course, there's not only two ways to learn, either verbally or written language or on tests. There's multiple ways that children learn and multiple ways that children demonstrate their understanding. So my curiosity and intrigue with Howard Gardner multiple intelligence really came to life when I graduated from my master's degree and was introduced to the work of Harvard Project Zero, because Howard Gardner and a lot of other researchers created a partnership with the schools in Reggio Emilia, Italy, and they did a lot of research with those schools to talk about how to make learning visible to the outside world. That was a huge influence on me. I was able to attend Harvard Project Zero for multiple summers. I was able to take once I went into administration, I was able to take my whole teaching team to Harvard Project Zero and teach a course for them during that time. And I was also able to go on multiple study tours to Reggio Emilia and also bring my teachers to Reggio Emilia and then come back to the school environment where we're at and implement those ideas. Very exciting time. Then right at around the time that I started Playful Learning, Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and her colleagues came out with an amazing mandate for Playful Learning in preschool, which just worked to validate all of the ideas that I had been forming in my head. It was the perfect research that I needed at that point in time, and they continue to do good research along the way. In 2016, they came out with a paper about the importance of guided play, and I feel like that's an evolution in play-based learning, where we need to get there's a whole continuum of play-based learning from putting children in a classroom with toys and letting them do whatever they want, where the teachers basically have zero interaction with the children, to a more guided play program where there's specific outcomes that are attached to these playful activities, and the idea of teacher as a facilitator and observer of children and their development. And I cannot leave out Maria Montessori. In my undergraduate degree, I was introduced to her work. I read every single book she ever wrote, and she is the reason why I went into education. So anyone who has experience with Montessori will see signs of her work on every slide here. So why do we need playful learning, or why do we need these play-based programs? Another epiphany was when I was listening to George Land's TED Talk on the failure of success, and he talked about this NASA study that happened, and his team was approached by NASA to create a creativity scale because they needed it for their hiring practices. If you can think about the type of people that NASA is looking for, it's people who can think outside of the box, people who can problem solve under tense situations, people who can come up with multiple solutions to problems. So they created they created the creativity scale, and they started implementing it, and it worked beautifully. NASA was thrilled with the quality of the people they were hiring. The people who developed the study were thrilled and decided to do a longitudinal study to really figure out, well, where does creativity start? Where does it begin? So they used the same scale on 1,600 5-year-olds, and 98% of them tested as creative geniuses. And the brilliance of this is that they kept at it, right? So then they tested the same group of children at 10 years old, and at that point, 30% had tested as creative geniuses. And the same group of 15-year-olds was only 12%, and then as adults, only 2% of them on the same scale they took when they were 5 years old were only 2% were creative geniuses. So what are we doing as a school system and as a society that's basically killing the creativity in children? And that's something that we all have to seriously look at, and that's what we're doing at an early childhood level, so that we can create a first school experience that really lights up a child and keeps that curiosity coming. I'm sorry if some of these slides are off, but so a playful learning method, a research-based approach. So once we opened our brick and mortar studio, we call our preschool a studio. So if I say studio, I mean preschool. But we started creating all of our own in-house lessons and materials, and we've been doing that for about 10 years now. So we really see our school as a laboratory for the students, teachers, and parents. And once we test something, test everything out, make adaptations, now we're bringing it to market for other schools to benefit from. So what are the pillars of playful learning? I realized that as we brought the curriculum to market, that I had to talk about the method as a whole that we use, because if you just take any one of these pillars, it's still going to make a difference, but it's not going to have the impact that we've seen firsthand in our school. So I realized it's really important to articulate what the method is in combination with the curriculum. So the playful learning lessons, hands-on learning experiences, classroom curation, and the school-to-home connection are the pillars of our philosophy. So then if we break it down a little bit more, playful learning lessons is how we practice guided play. They're printable, basically, provocations or invitations to experience different types of things. We try to use them in combination with other hands-on materials to give children that hands-on experience, but it also gives them a way to record their findings and their understanding in a way that sometimes 2-year-olds don't have the language to do, but through these lessons, printable lessons that we've created, we can see their thinking, we can see where they're at, and their basic snapshots every day of where the child is developmentally. So it gives a true picture into where the child is at, and they feel like they're playing the whole time. So this is what allows us it's a method to the madness of guided play. It allows us that structure. Every lesson is connected to an outcome. It just gives us that structure within the context of other play-based activities that we leave out. Classroom curation is key, and at the heart of classroom curation is teachers, and a big part of our goal is to elevate the field of early childhood teaching to really give teachers the respect and the pay that they deserve, but also to alleviate the stress that they have to do. I mean, it's the most stressful job in the world. You're juggling 5 million things at a time, and if we can help with the planning and we can help with the curriculum, then we can give those teachers professional development to learn how to be facilitators and observers of the child. They get to focus their attention on the child. So we're trying to alleviate some of the hard work that goes with teaching so that the teachers can focus on what's most important. And other aspects of classroom curation is classroom design, rhythms and routines, behavior management, and creating a classroom culture. Then we have the hands-on experiences. So you can't separate the playful learning lessons with the hands-on experiences. Every single lesson we have comes with hands-on materials we use hands-on materials for them to use. But it also includes realistic dramatic play in the classroom, curated learning labs and lessons, which we'll go into later, outdoor investigations and explorations, field experience. So it's not only hands-on experiences in the classroom, it's getting them out into the community, getting them out into nature so that they can understand the broader world around them, and everything that they're learning has context. And then the homeschool connection is extremely important, and we built that in to the fabric of what we do so that the parents are engaged and we're completely transparent about what they're learning, and so that the parents can celebrate their accomplishments and milestones together with us. And that involves teacher-parent communication, parent and school connections, parent and child connections, shared experiences, and then one thing that we found that goes a tremendous way is sending home weekly portfolios, and I'll go into that a little bit later. So now we're going to talk about the playful learning lessons. So these are standards-aligned, interdisciplinary lessons that we create in large format. We use an 11 by 17 printer, so they're large format. We use real live photos of real world things, and it kind of brings everything to life. Now, these lessons can be anything from movement cards to vocabulary cards to scavenger hunts to science experiments to literacy practice. Every single unit is interdisciplinary, and all of the units are themes that children naturally gravitate and are curious about. And they're supplemental, so we're a supplemental curriculum company, so we provide the hands-on element to whatever curriculum you're already using. One of the more popular curriculums that we supplement is creative curriculum, which is growing tremendously in all early childhood classrooms. So we've created supplemental units for all of those units so that teachers have materials they can use directly in the classroom right away. These materials can be used for explicit instruction, and I think it's important. Even though you're in a play-based program, the role of the teacher doesn't disappear. It's harder work to have a play-based program because you have to do more planning. And explicit instruction is part of that. But we are inspired, the type of of course, whole group instruction is helpful at some times, but we also take lessons from the Montessori approach, where sometimes materials are on the shelves or out on tables, and a teacher will do a mini lesson for one or two students on how to use the material, and then those students will teach other children how to use those materials. It can be mini lessons for small groups or large groups, but these give you the outcomes, the way to reach the outcomes that you have for your students. They can act as, in center. They are perfect for centers. They're perfect for assessments. They're provocations if you study the Reggio Emilia approach at all. And they help in scaffolding. And they're also, we send them home so the parents can see what they're doing in their portfolios. So when I'm talking about portfolios here, I'm not talking about assessment portfolios. I'm talking about sharing your work type of portfolios. And we send home beautiful portfolios every week so parents know exactly what their child is doing every day in school. So the importance of guided play, and this comes from the 2016 paper that was put out by Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and her colleagues about guided play. And from that paper, I got this quote: "Guided play maintains the free exploration and fun of free play, but with a focus on specific learning goals that are lightly scaffolded by the adult." So our lessons come with scaffolding built into them. And then it's key to have professional development for teachers so that child development is ingrained in them, so that they can see where a child is in one place, they know how to get them to the next place. And so this includes child-led exploration, subtle adult guidance, embedded learning goals, and active engagement. And I have to say, the more we dive into guided play, the more engaged the students are, because students want to master skills. They want to feel themselves growing. They want to stretch and reach the next level. They want to crack that code and read those books. They really want to make the most of the environment they're in. So the more you give them problems to solve in a playful way, the more engaged they actually are. When you don't so we've done some classroom observations to see which activities children engage longer in versus other activities in our classroom. And sometimes when you're doing observations or research, you get answers that you weren't quite expecting. The more open-ended materials that did not have an outcome attached to it were less used than the learning labs or materials that we put out that had outcomes attached to it, because they want to master what's in front of them. They want to solve problems. So that really increased engagement for us, which was an interesting note for us to take. So this is something that I do when I'm training teachers to go into the classroom is you want to teach them the process of playful learning. And you always have to start with early childhood goals that you have. And then you come up with invitations to learn that help meet those goals. And then you observe how the children are interacting with those materials. Do they dump the materials on the floor? Do they stay, for 1 minute and then give up? Do they stay engaged and take it to a level that you didn't even expect them to do? This is another thing I want to talk about is oftentimes, there's a glass ceiling when we study child development, and I majored in child development. You get this idea that you always have to put out these developmentally appropriate activities. Everything has to be developmentally appropriate, and it is important because we have to meet that zone of proximal development to keep them engaged. But with that said, I have been blown away almost every day that I'm in the studio by how children surpass that. So yes, you have to put out developmentally appropriate activities, but you have to keep in mind when you're building that glass ceiling. And an example of that is when we first opened our studio, we had a lot of enrichment classes. So children were at other schools, but they would come to us after school. And one of the students that we had regularly was amazing. We'd have activities out where I'd see him count to 100, or I'd see him group numbers. He was just really great with numbers. And then the school he was going to was asked me to consult they wanted to move to a play-based program. So I spent a year at the school consulting with them and helping them build their play-based program. But at the beginning of that process, I wanted to observe in their classroom to see what was happening. And my student was in this class, and they were doing a whole group direct instruction on numbers 1 through 5. Yeah, and it was 20 minutes of the teacher talking. It was another 20 minutes of going through centers that only went through 1 through 5. Multiple centers in the classroom. They were only all 1 through 5. And I was thinking, he knows how to count. He has one-to-one corresponds down to 100, and I knew that for a fact. And that's when I realized you have to scaffold all the experiences in your classroom, differentiate all experiences in your classroom, and don't put that glass ceiling on there. So you're observing how they interact with it. You notice their interests. You notice what questions they have. You notice what the light bulbs that go off, or the aha moments that they have, and then you can build other learning experiences, incorporating the next level of skills that you want, and then create new invitations to learn. And if you're in that cycle where you're really tuning into the student and you're meshing their interests with your outcomes, that's where the magic happens. So I know so many curriculums have 20 or 30 or 40 outcomes that teachers have to track, but I seriously feel like they all boil down to these in one way or another. Habits of heart and mind, that's keeping that curiosity. It's keeping them asking questions. It's teaching them that there's ways to find answers to their questions. You want to keep them actively engaged in the education process. Another huge goal for early childhood is prolonged attention span. So, at 18 months when they come into our program, they're kind of, bouncing from activity to activity. We have a period that's called open studio, where we set up the whole classroom is pre-prepared, and we allow children to a sense of choice. So they're able to circulate around the classroom and choose the activities that they're most interested in. At the beginning of the year, that might last 10 minutes because that's the only amount of time that they're able to focus independently. Then we might have to go back to whole group work or those kinds of things. But as the year progresses, we move into half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half, where I walk into the classroom and I see a group of toddlers, and they're all completely engaged in one activity or another. And it's really incredible. It is a muscle that can be developed at a very young age, and it's essential for their future success. Independence. Giving children a sense of autonomy is critical. If they feel like you're taking their autonomy away, you're not going to have them emotionally. So giving them the independence on how to access materials, how to put them away, how to self-care, all of those important things. Of course, fine and large motor development, and then of course the disciplines, literacy, math, art, science, and all those are very critical as well. So then you master the art of the invitation. So we were doing a seed study, and we had seeds everywhere. One of the activities that we put out was shucking bean seeds and having them put them in the bowl. So it was fine motor. It was kind of giving them a sense of where seeds come from, and we had no idea where it would end up. We were also sprouting seeds all around the classroom so that they could see the process of seeds growing. And so, it was a great activity that the children were very engaged in. And then we observed how they were responding to it, what they were doing, and there was a moment where a child was so interested in one of the seeds that was sprouting in the classroom that they asked if they could hold it in the hand. We had jars all over. We had seed, discs with seeds that were growing. We had any way we could sprout seeds all over the classroom. So we handed the child the seed, and it had, gotten enlarged and was, starting to sprout. And all of a sudden, the side came off, and the little baby leaf in the middle of the seed was showing. And this child lit up, right? A baby leaf! There's a baby leaf in the seed! And this is their hand. I took a picture because they were so excited. She had to go tell every child in the class that the seed actually had a baby leaf. And so my point with this is these aha moments is that you don't just teach seeds, you teach seed nests. You have to teach them magic, because I've been doing this for 30 years and seeds sprout every time. Every time they sprout. That's a miracle. That's amazing, right? That's the essence that we have to pass on to these students to keep them engaged in their own education. So we had a wonderful seed nest moment. So we created a project where every child got to sprout their own seed in a bottle and take it home with a chart. So this is a kind of complement our lessons provide to hands-on activities with a chart of the different parts of a bean seed. Then we sent it home with the chart, and they got to watch the seed grow, but they got to tell their parents the parts of the seed. They become the teachers. When you send them home with interesting projects and interesting materials, they become the teachers, and that engages the parents in a way that has surprising consequences. And you also have to be prepared to remove the glass ceiling. So this was the bean shucking activity. There was two 4-year-old girls who were sitting there together. They shucked we were out of the beans, right? And they shucked so many of those seeds. There was piles and piles of them. And then they wanted to start counting them. And we happened to have this hundreds chart nearby. So the teacher was in tune enough with the child, not stressed about what they're going to do in the next day, that kind of stuff. The teacher was in tune with the child. So she brought out the hundreds chart, and they sat meticulously, and talk about fine motor skills, meticulously grabbing one bean seed at a time and counting to 100. And that's what I mean by removing the glass ceiling. I mean being open to the opportunities where children can take their learning to the next level. So we want to take learning beyond memorization and make learning memorable, and that's what's going to stick with them. So in order to do this, the experiences that you provide need to be an aid to life. They need to be, learning is meaningful and within context. This was a big lesson that I took away from Montessori, where she believes that, children want to mimic us. The reason why dramatic play areas and classrooms are so popular is not because they want to play imaginary play. They want to do what they see us doing. They want to master the skills they see us doing. So the more real world tools, experiences, we let children use hammers. The more real world tools and experiences that you can provide that are familiar to them, that they see adults doing in the world, is going to keep them engaged. Sensorial, children learn through their senses, so we're always trying to figure out ways to include multiple sensorial experiences in each lesson. They need hands-on learning. They learn through their hands, and they need to learn purposeful movements. So that's why we're inspired by the practical life that Maria Montessori does, where they're learning how to chop, they're learning how to pour, they're learning how to use a spoon. They want purposeful movement. Sometimes play-based programs, they're playing the whole time, but again, they're not solving any problems, and they're not moving for a purpose. We want to ingrain the purposeful movement, into their beings. And then, of course, a community of learners. Culture of shared language and experiences among children, teachers, and families is really a magic ingredient to all of this. Also, the art of differentiation, and this is what I wanted to just briefly go over with you. So here's two of our lessons. They're a letter match in our Arctic animal. All of our units are themes that children are universally attracted to. They're also interdisciplinary. So you can teach reading, writing, math, social skills, critical thinking, fine motor, gross motor skills, all within the same theme, which also goes a long way to help keep the children engaged. But here's one. It's a simple little modification that we make. One has the letters inside the box, first consonant sounds of the word. It has the letter in the box. So if a child's not ready to articulate, to be able to identify a beginning sound, what they're doing is visual discrimination. They're matching what the A looks like to the A on the paper, which is the first foundation of learning how to read. You need to be able to differentiate between the different letters. And if you think about the alphabet, the changes between each letter is not that great, So just even the visual discrimination to be able to identify different letters is a huge pre-reading skill. But we also make a copy where there's no letter in the box. So for the children who can identify those early sounds and recognize a P on a piece of paper and glue it on the page, then we're able to meet them where they're at as well. And all of our lessons have slight little modifications like that, so teachers can differentiate according to their class's needs. Here's a math activity. In the first picture, they're doing matching and visual discrimination by just finding the number that matches the number in the cloud. In the second one, they're doing ordinal counting and number recognition because the numbers are not provided in the cloud. And then another way to adapt this activity is one-to-one correspondence by just giving them little marble counters. So they're putting the number of counters in each cloud. Just simple ways that you can differentiate. Also, we learned this the hard way. Assessment needs to be embedded in early childhood classrooms. When we first started, we started out by doing a screening, like a pre-kindergarten type screening, and it was all play-based. We developed all our own. There was fun little materials that you could do it with it. But just the act of taking a child out of a classroom and sitting down one-on-one with a teacher to do a screening is going to change the outcomes that they come up with, because early childhood students do not act on demand. They do not. A perfect example was when my daughter was young. I think she was 2 years old. We had all these little Audubon stuffed birds that if you squeeze them, they make the bird call of that bird. And she knew every single local bird's name. And so they were all lined up on the windowsill, and she was saying, cardinal, blue jay, red-winged blackbird. And so I run over to my camera. I'm like, okay, tell me now. And she's like, sleepy, dopey. And they do not respond on demand. And when we did those screenings, I compared our beginning of the year screenings to the end of the year screenings, and one child's name might be Aurora one day, might be Charlie the next day, and they're completely serious when they tell you that answer. So in order to grab the most accurate data, assessments need to be happen in a natural flow of a classroom where the child does not feel like there's any other expectations on them except for just to go through their regular daily routine. So all of our lessons can be assessments. They're basically a snapshot. We do not intervene on anything that children do on with these lessons. They are a complete snapshot of where the child's at developmentally, and that gets sent home every week so the parents know where their child's at developmentally. This was we use Brightwell as a communication system. I'm not a proponent. I'm not attached to Brightwell in any way, but there's a lot of curriculum companies that come with these online things where you can enter your standards or your goals and then take pictures and write stories, the stories of your observations or what you observed during that time. So this was one so we use Brightwell for our communication system. We just entered our standards into it, and now our teachers are snapping pictures while the child's engaged throughout the day and writing a quick note about what that activity demonstrates that they're able to do. We also we like to engage the children in their own evaluation from a very young age, get that metacognition about their own growth going. And so we created very early childhood friendly self-evaluations that they love, and we share them at parent-teacher conferences. And again, it's another thing that parents get really excited about seeing themselves. Grow and glow. What area do they want to grow in, and what area do they think they already glow in is what the question. I was very excited a couple of years ago to see the work of Amy Berry, who created a continuum of student engagement that was created for elementary school children. But when I saw it, it instantly spoke to me because we see the children going through these phases of engagement as well. So internally right now, which is what's great about having a school that we can use as a laboratory, we're trying to create a whole classroom observation sheet for student engagement so that we can see, more clearly see which activities children are engaging longer and longer periods of time and which activities is getting no time from the students. And this was a copy that she allowed us to use by permission from her book. So this is just one thing that we're working on as a team right now. And the next pillar that we're going to discuss of the Playful Learning method is hands-on experiences. Oh, can someone press play on that? So we set up. My team is making me do reels now. So this is like one of our first edited reels.
Switched up the classroom.
I thought it'd be easier to take you through a classroom walkthrough so you can see how we set up a typical unit.
And I'm going to talk you through the other setup that we did for that unit.
Oh, this is for a clothing unit.
We always start with our classroom library, carefully selected books about the topic. Here we have a fun, realistic, dramatic play area with hats from around the world, a little map where they can try to identify the countries that those hats come from. Here's the wonderful Montessori frames where they can learn how to button and zip and some great sewing activities. Here's a fun suitcase where they decide what clothes they would take a vacation, and clothing racks and a clothing store. So many wonderful materials for them to explore. We have different prices on each of the items so they can buy things from each other, sort the items, incorporate vocabulary into their play. Over here, we have some learning labs. Here's a laundry sort set up where the children are able to sort the laundry, and some button counting activities. A great activity with buttons for fine motor skills where they can make dots or zigzags or different types of lines. Here's our great Play-Doh mat with different types of shirts and Play-Doh to hang up clothes, little baby hangers. And in our writing center, we're inviting them to design their own t-shirt. Thanks for coming.
So you can see that our lessons are basically complements to the hands-on activities that we have in the class, and it adds that specific goal or outcome that we're trying to get from the students. So it just complements the hands-on activities that we already have. Are there any questions about this before I move on? So setting up learning labs in the classroom with specific goals is one aspect of creating hands-on curriculum. We also have the students do a hands-on project every day. And it's a commitment to do that, but we really feel that it's important for children to make things. And at first, I was very particular about what kind of projects they would do because I wanted them to really have meaning and take their understanding of the topic that we're learning to a deeper level. And then I realized that even some of the cutesy crafts, which I used to be so against, if it's related to the theme, it's really about them making something. It's about them making something that has to do with what they're learning about. And so we're really a proponent for doing, an art project or some sort of project. Here you can see it might be a cooking project. If we're studying, food and nutrition, then we create a little tray where every child gets to make their own individual salad and even make their dressing with herbs and olive oil and a little mortar and pestle. If we're learning about birds, we have them make their own bird feeders. If we're learning about buildings, we have them build their own buildings. So that hands-on element where they're actually creating something that they get to take home themselves is what makes them so proud of their work. And then these projects go home in the portfolio along with all the lessons that they complete throughout the week. And then also taking hands-on experiences beyond the walls. A lot of our lessons are outdoor scavenger hunts, outdoor walks where they're looking for certain things. So we create a lot of lessons that gets them outside. We also do, at our school, we do field experiences every year where each class takes on a different ecosystem because we live in this beautiful place that has many different ecosystems. And we invite the parents to come along. And on that trip, we provide activity packs of our lessons that were created specifically for that location that the child and the parent do together throughout their time there, where if we're at the pond, they're taking water samples and they're taking the temperature of the water and they're taking the pH balance, so that it's another way to engage the parents in the process. And we really believe in creating do it together DIT experiences, whether they're field trips or whether they're activities that we send home for parents and children to do together. Even when we have special events in school, we always have a craft table set up so that parents and children can sit down together and make things together. We're always looking for ways to get parents to spend quality time with their children while they're at our school. The classroom curation, so this is what we were talking about earlier, where the teacher really is responsible for curating their classroom. I like to think about classroom setup as curating. You're specifically choosing the specific materials, and you're creating a beautiful display that attracts the children to engage in the activity. Part of this important classroom culture is respect for the child. And I'll never forget when I first opened my space, it was for a little bit older children. We slowly gravitated towards early childhood. So these were probably like first and second and third, when I say older, I'm first, second, and third graders. And when they first came into the space, we weren't quite a school yet. I was working with small groups. And they'd say, "What is this place?" What is, because we have a very unique classroom design. what is this place? It kind of looks like a science lab, but it's not a science lab. Like, what do you do here? And I said, well, I said, it's like a science lab, but you can learn about whatever you want. And then I'd say, what do you want to learn about? And they couldn't answer the question. These 7 and 8-year-olds, when you ask them what they want to learn about, they couldn't even think of one thing they wanted to learn about. It took a few weeks of spending time with them, of listening to their questions, of providing them with interesting activities, where they started making requests. Next week I want to learn about this, or can we learn about this, or can we learn about that? But we had to deprogram them for being passive, right? They learned how to be passive and have no say in their own education, and we have to nurture them so that they can find their voice again and ask about what they really want to learn about. So we do a whole activity like this with our students because we want to know what they want to learn about. So, and then we take pictures and we send it home to their parents. So he wanted to learn about building. So it's important to create autonomy, make them feel seen and heard. That's why it's important for teachers to become observers so they can pick up on their interests. Because if a teacher listens to a child's interests and then doesn't act, or a parent, and then does an activity based on their interests, they really take it. They know. They know you listened to them. They know you thought about them. They know you gave them something they would love the next day. And they truly appreciate it, even at the youngest ages. Predictable boundaries are so important. I think in a lot of play-based programs, there's no boundaries, and it's a catastrophe. They have to know their boundaries. Boundaries make them feel safe. They can't be overbearing. They can't restrict them. They can't take their autonomy away, but there has to be boundaries that make them feel safe. And again, making sure you're focusing on the zone of proximal development. The role of the teacher is so important. They need to be multi-talented Renaissance people. So they need to prepare, engage, guide, support, observe, document, collaborate, assess, differentiate, design their curriculum in their classrooms, and connect to parents. It's a huge job. It's the hardest job I've ever had in my life. My job now is nothing compared to when I was a teacher in the classroom. So we need to respect them. We need to give them the resources that they need, and we need to help elevate in society the role that they play. And the role of the principal is very important too, because the principal needs to support this type of learning, and they need to know what to look for when they walk into a classroom. Like, here's an activity where we were studying flowers, and the children were dissecting the flowers to try and discover what the different parts were. So here you can see flowers. So the principal might walk in, see ripped up flowers and stems and leaves all over the floor, and have no idea the importance of this activity. So we're working on professional development for principals as well, and also we're working on a documentation sheet of what they want to look for when they go into a classroom, so that the principals are engaged just as much as the teachers and the parents and the children. It's critical for this to be able to spread. Now, the role of the environment. So this is what I really picked up from Montessori and the Reggio Emilia approach. They really take curation seriously in their classrooms, and these environments are beautiful. And a lot of people ask me, okay, what is it, Mariah? You're an educator. What is it, nature or nature versus nurture? Which one is it? I know you have the answer to this, And I like to use a metaphor that came to mind when I was visiting the redwood forest up in Northern California. I grew up in Southern California, and while I was in college, I took a trip to the redwoods in Northern California. And there's just nothing more humbling and inspiring than being in the presence of something so much greater than yourself. And so in the presence of these huge redwood trees, I was just so in awe. And then I looked down and I saw a little educational plaque in the ground that said, redwood trees are the tallest trees in the world, but they only reach their fullest height if they're planted and grow, or if they're grown in a 140-mile stretch from Northern California to Oregon along the coast. If a redwood seed is planted somewhere outside of that environment, they'll never reach its fullest potential. And so that's what the metaphor I like to use, that every child is born with their own unique potential, but if they're not put in the right environment, they may never meet that potential. So the environment plays a huge role. So this is what one of our classrooms look like, the prepared environment. So a lot of work goes into the preparation of the environment before the children even come. And that's what makes it run so smoothly, because the children are engaged. And again, teachers can be proactively observers of the children. The secret ingredient to all play-based programs is giving students an element of choice. They could be working so hard on reading or writing, and play is kind of, we use the word play because we create this dichotomy between work and play, but children don't have that same dichotomy between work and play. If they're working in flow, they feel like they're playing. And as long as they have a choice, they feel like they're playing. So giving them that sense of choice with interesting, inspiring, engaging, outcomes-based activities for them to work on is the key. And I love this quote by Montessori: "The environment must be rich in motives which lends interest to activity and invite the children to conduct his own or her own experiences." So you want them to create their own experiences out of the environment that you've prepared. And the school to home connection. So we've had to be very clever on how we build this because it's an important part. And as an administrator who has teachers that work for me, I want to, and we live in a place that has extremely over-involved kind of helicopter type parents. I wanted to create this safe boundary around them because I've also worked in other schools that had those same type of parents as a young teacher, and it's very stressful. You know, on the first day of school, they walk up, "How are you going to challenge my child?" You know, they basically want to get them into Harvard by going to the right preschool, which is their, you know, that's their choice. That's one, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to involve the parents from the ground up so that they're already engaged and they're already buy into what we're doing for their children because they see the impact that it has, right? So school to home connection, the first thing that's really important to think about is that parents provide an audience for students' work. Um, in the real world, you know, yes, we have hobbies and stuff like that, but in the real world, when I really work hard on something, I have an audience for it, right? And I get feedback on it. And that is important for children to experience too. If they're working so hard and not taking anything home, and the only audience they have is the teacher who gives them no feedback on the work that they do, they're not getting any of that critical feedback from the world and how to improve themselves, or that they did something good, or that someone likes this about it, but maybe you could try this. They're not getting any of that feedback. So the parents as an audience is critical for the work that children are doing in early childhood. You want to create a shared language. We send home newsletters every week. So every week our parents get a newsletter that describes what happened in their classroom. They get their child's portfolio so that they can read from us what they did. Then they can look at their students' work and have their student tell them about their portfolio. And it creates a common language about the topics that we're using. And the parents say, and the results, it's not, I don't have it in here, but the results we're getting back from surveys from the other schools who are using it is that vocabulary is blossoming because we make it very explicit in our lessons, and then they bring it home and they talk to their parents about it as well. You want to, again, create memorable experiences, and you want to have an audience that celebrates growth and learning and creativity. And when the students become the teachers and the parents are interested in, the trees study that they're learning about or the seeds that they're learning about, then they're modeling a love of lifelong learning as well. So we talked about DIT activities before. So in our lessons that we've created, we create a lot of activities that we send home for parents and students to do together and then bring them back in and share with the class. It's a wonderful way to engage the parents. They love doing that. We also, like I said, invite parents on the field experiences and create a packet that they experience together out in the field. But the thing that really changed the game for us was when we started sending home portfolios of the students' work. And again, it means portfolio meaning this is the work that I've done. We don't use it for assessment at this point in time. So we print everything out in large format because it kind of brings everything to life for the students. So we had to purchase bags that fit the 11 by 17 printables lessons that we create. And then every week we send home the hands-on projects that they do, so the arts and crafts projects or cooking, or if it's able to send home. And we also send home the lessons that they do in the learning labs as they're rotating around the room. And this creates such an amazing level of respect from parents to teacher because we're making the learning transparent, just like Project Zero was working on making learning visible. They were doing it in different ways, but making learning transparent, what you're doing in school all day with their children, make it transparent and send home samples of it, and you'll have lifelong fans. When you don't send work home, and all they keep asking, is what does my child do? They're so desperate to know what their child is doing all day, especially the first school experience when you drop off your child. They all wish they could be flies on the wall. So we send home a newsletter. We also have a photo site that we upload photos to every week that's just private to them, and they have a password so they can see photos that we've been taking throughout the week, and then they see their child's work. We did in our pilot program that we did not this year but last year. We were sending home all the activities. We were sending this teacher laminated copies she could use in the classroom, and then we were sending them classroom sets of these activities so each child could do them individually and send them home. We sent her home the portfolio bags, but this teacher was so not used to receiving materials for their classroom, that she wanted to hoard it. She laminated every single classroom set so she could teach it for the rest of her life, those kinds of things. So we finally had to put our foot down a little bit and say, we'll send you the extra materials if you want the extra materials, but it's very important that you have the students do these individual lessons and send them home, periodically. It doesn't have to be once a week. It could be once every other week. It could even be once a month. Just send them home. So she's like, okay, I'll do it. And that was probably October. Then we talked to her in December, and she had just finished parent-teacher conferences, and her first comment was, I will never not do portfolios again. She said, I barely had any communication with my parents over the first few months of school. They all walked in raving fans because I'd been sending their work home, and they were so excited because they could see their child's excitement about what they're learning. And she said she'll never turn back. This is really an important part of what we do. And this creates that protective barrier around our teachers because the parents are always getting information about what their students are working on. They don't need to, focus on one teacher and figure out how they're going to challenge their child. So this is we got some testimonials from the parents in this pilot program, and one of them said, I wanted to take a minute to say how much we love all the materials that are sent home from Playful Learning. I love sitting down with David and having him teach me all the things he is learning. The beautiful illustrations in the Playful Learning handouts help bring nature to life for him and enable him to not just learn, but to become the teacher himself. We also do parent education, which is really important. We just started a talk series because we can send the portfolios home, but we want them to know what they're looking at. So we did a whole workshop on how to talk to your child about their work so that they could really understand every single little mark and every single little thing on that paper is your child accomplishing the goals that we have for them. And so we needed to break it down so that they knew what they were looking at, which added a whole other level of engagement in the child's work and support for the program. So measuring our impact. We just started on this journey to start getting our curriculum into wider schools. I just hired a director and associate director, so I'm able to focus on this more, and we're slowly rolling out to other schools. But in terms of measuring our impact, we want to try to reach every stakeholder in the process. So we do multiple things. For student engagement, we actually give the students Likert scale, little happy faces, so that they can judge the activity, so we can see if they are enjoying the lessons and experiences that we're creating. We do a teacher survey to ask them if they've noticed changes in the child's engagement after using our materials, and also in terms of student engagement. We do parent surveys for our own population. We've had a little bit of trouble sending surveys home to the schools that we work with because they just really want to protect the parents' privacy, and they're just a little anxious of sending surveys home to parents at this point, but we're working on it. We share the teacher surveys that we do, we share with the school leadership that we work on, so that we're transparent about how our materials are impacting their classrooms. And then we're also working, we incorporate the student self-evaluation, and we're also working on that class-wide student engagement assessment that I showed you earlier. And the same thing for strengthening, the same tools are used for find out about strengthening the homeschool connection, and also increasing teacher satisfaction and to elevate teaching. I thought I added a school leader survey is an important part of that too, because we want to get feedback from the school leaders about what they're seeing as well. So we have some results from our survey. Like I said, we just rolled out curriculum this year. We're in about 30 different classrooms. So we're still getting surveys in. So the impact that I'm going to show you is from a very small sample of like 14 teachers. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at these results. We're still in the process of collecting data and validating that data. But so far, I mean, I get excited about every single survey that gets turned in. But so far, we're getting great results. So one of the questions is, have the Playful Learning materials made engaging with your students about the topics you are teaching easier? And we have 92% that said yes. Have the Playful Learning materials increased student engagement in the topics you're teaching? And that was 100%. It got cut off somehow. And the next question was, have the Playful Learning materials enhanced the implementation of your curriculum? Because we try to support curriculums that are already in place. And we got 100% that said yes. And this is because we're giving them actual materials they can use in the classroom. Most curriculums give them nothing. They give them a recipe book or a teacher guide that tells them what would be nice if they would do it, but then they have to go create all the materials themselves. And we want to ease some of the pressure on teachers by giving them materials about the topics they're teaching, again, so they can focus on the children in front of them. And then have the Playful Learning materials made it easier for you to plan upcoming units and we had 92% of the teachers say yes. So we're making sure that all of our goals are being met through these surveys. Again, in terms of assessment of the program, they already have programs where they're assessing the outcomes of those programs. We're just measuring the outcomes that we're working towards. Oh, and then the results from the students. So we did have our two pilot programs did the Likert scales for the students. And so we had one pilot program at Bancroft Elementary in a public school in Washington, D.C. That's one of the most diverse schools in the country. And it was their public 3K program. And she was able to get them to respond to 11 of the Playful Learning lessons, and 100% of the students thought it was a very satisfying experience, big smiley face. And then we did the same thing with Deborah Lindbergh at a transitional kindergarten at St. Anne's Belfield School, which is a private school, but it was their first year of starting transitional kindergarten. And they rated 17 Playful Learning lessons, and the students rated approximately 90% of the activities very satisfying and 5% satisfying. So we had the student approval too at this point. And the good news is that the research keeps coming. There was a great new study that just came out by Karen Elig and her colleagues on November 24th. They were investigating student success in play-based kindergarten classrooms with Title I students. And all of the methods that I talked to you about were used in that program. And they've had incredible success in kindergarten Title I classes with enhanced reading gains, improved executive function, vocabulary development, and math achievement. So the research studies keep coming out validating this type of approach. And these are all the things that we discussed today. And I just want to end with a thought because I know that the power of a group is more powerful than one. And so my request to you is to do together, let's imagine a world where every child, regardless of where they live or go to school, has access to engaging, enriching learning experiences, ones that not only nurture their curiosity, but also embrace their families as essential partners in the educational journey. A world where early child education is not just imparting knowledge, but about fostering a deep love of learning, building confidence, and creating meaningful connections. A world where we are not just educating children, we are nurturing compassionate, curious, and capable future citizens who will shape a better tomorrow. This is the future we are shaping together, one classroom, one child, one family at a time. Thank you.
I think we have just a couple minutes for questions, and if anybody on Zoom wants to ask, you can type it into the chat. But I'll let you ask your own questions just for a couple minutes here.
Sure. Hi.
I'm Joe. First of all, thank you so much. It's so captivating. I do have a question. Sorry. Hey y'all, I'm Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Second of all, thank you. Third of all, I do have a question when it comes to the school parent connection and stuff like that. I was wondering specifically have you faced cultural or language barriers? You know, if a parent doesn't speak English at home or kids don't speak English specifically, how can parents still be engaged with their kids learning and stuff like that?
So that's a really good question. The first district that implemented our curriculum is in Utica, New York. It's a very diverse population, low socioeconomic, and a lot of refugees. And they haven't quite gotten to, so the school leader is very respectful of the teachers and doesn't want to just dump a whole new program on them. So she has a 2-year plan with us. The first plan was getting them to use our lessons in the classroom. Next year, only a few of the teachers are printing out the materials and sending them home, but they've had rave results. But what's great about our materials is it creates those conversation starters, and the children end up teaching the grown-up, but we don't have that data yet because they haven't quite rolled that part of the program out. But the good news is that in the classroom, the teachers are seeing a big difference with the materials in the classroom, so it's not affecting the students in the classroom at this time, but I can't tell you, I don't have a lot of good data on, I don't have a lot of good data on that in the schools that are using it right now. Hopefully I can report back to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hi, I'm Garrison. Thank you again for having this lecture. I was just wondering, have you seen any variation in engagement among male and female students in your programs?
That's a good question. I have to say, refreshingly no. Refreshingly no. The boys that we have in our I can only speak for our program, but we try to get to know our students and put out activities that we know they're interested in. You know, they'll have a unit where oh, so-and-so and so-and-so is going to love this unit, they're going to love this activity. So I think we try to tune in to the students regardless of sex and captivate them with what we know they're going to be interested in. And I haven't seen it. I have not seen that. in the younger children. I used to see it in the older children. I mean, like the 7 and 8-year-olds a little bit. But that might just be because of something, from their younger years. But for the youngest ones, I don't see that. This is anecdotal. Yes. Yes.
Hi, thank you for coming. I know you talked about the longitudinal study of like how children may become less creative over time. Is there any push to put this kind of playful learning in like middle schools or high schools as well?
That's such a good question. I wish I well, I think there's a lot of people doing research on the play-based learning in elementary school. Unfortunately, I think it starts to get lost in middle school and high school. I don't know a lot of people that are trying to implement it in the middle school or high school level, except for like Montessori programs that might, that grow up in age. Unfortunately, I was just in your maker lab here, and I was so excited. It's my favorite spot on the campus. Those type of things in middle school and high school would just be so incredible. But I don't know anyone who's doing it in middle school or high school. Maybe that's something you could take on.
Hi, we have one question from Zoom.
Mhm.
So someone said that they were deeply moved by this and that this is the way that kindergarten was taught in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
It started to change in the 90s and they watched it happen with their child around 2000. And the question is, why do you think kindergarten became more similar to first or second grade where they sit in desks most of the time?
When I saw the biggest shift, and I mean, don't quote me on this, but when I saw the biggest shift is when they went to the new curriculum. What year was that? The uh, Common Core. And when you read the Common Core, it's actually very open-ended. It's not that terrible. I don't think there's anything wrong with the Common Core. I think it might have been how schools interpreted it. But all of a sudden, kindergarten became first grade, and they never went back. And I think it's damaging a lot of students. I see a lot of students who already in kindergarten feel incompetent, feel like they're not making the grade, feel like they're not keeping up with their peers. And that's devastating for a child because we all know that learning how to read is like learning how to walk. It could happen at 11 months, or learning how to walk, it could happen anywhere between 11 months and 2 years old, and it's still fine. By the time they're in third grade, you don't even know who was walking earlier than the other. And reading is the same way. So if you're already making them feel defeated before they're developmentally ready to start reading, that's a travesty. So I agree. I saw it happen too.
Okay. I think we'll wrap up, but thank you all so much for joining us today.